Hey! Today, I would like to talk a bit about setting up SuperCollider and doing some audio routing inside an existing Arch Linux virtual machine. Even though I think SuperCollider is a really great program, I am actually planning to use it as part of a future Aleph video, so my focus for now is not an in-depth exploration of SuperCollider's audio possibilities. In this video, I am going to discuss the process first, then do a short demo of how I get things started up and running at the end. Although I did not have any issues getting it set up on a normal, non-VM system, I did run into some issues when trying to get it set up in a VM, and I wanted to make this video for anyone else that may be interested in trying to set up SuperCollider in a similar environment. I do realize there is a lot of room for improvement and optimization, and I may make another video in the future if I run into serious issues with my current setup. On that note, I would like to begin this video with a general disclaimer. This method works for me in my system right now without too many audio issues. I haven't really noticed any popping and cracking, and most of the time it seems pretty stable. But, unfortunately, on this particular computer, I only have two vCPUs that I can dedicate to my VM, and that's probably not ideal. SuperCollider is able to run in this environment, but, if possible, dedicating more virtual CPUs might be a good idea. Also, because I'm not necessarily planning on trying to use SuperCollider to its full potential, I realize that, especially with more sophisticated SuperCollider scripts, additional countermeasures will probably be necessary. I've read a bit about CPU pinning and I might need to try experimenting with that in the future. For the time being, I'm just using a very basic setup with no special settings though. While everything seems stable for the most part, I have noticed that a running SuperCollider server can begin to spike CPU after a bit depending on several factors I will mention later on. When this happens, I usually just reboot the SuperCollider server, and that seems to take care of it. I also don't leave the server on when not interacting directly with it. Also, I'm not going to include the process of getting the Arch virtual machine set up in this video. I did cover the VM setup process for Ubuntu server in the Aleph series, and many of the steps are similar. There are so many other great Arch install videos on YouTube, and I don't think I could explain the process as well as some other creators do. As with the video from the Aleph series, I'm using KVM, QEMU, and libvirt. I know there is a lot of information about the setup process, but I found this really great explanation on Stack Overflow for anyone looking for a really easy overview of what these are and what they do. In terms of general settings for the VM, first, as I already mentioned, it may be a good idea to dedicate as many vCPUs as possible. These are my settings, and the possibilities are a bit limited for me. Sound settings took a bit of time for me to get right. I did experiment with several different methods, including sending through an external USB sound card, but I got the best results with HDA-ICH9. There are actually several other options, and according to the available information on the internet, different settings may work better for others, but HDA-ICH9 works best for my system. In terms of the Arch Linux install process, I would recommend the Arch wiki supplemented by the other great videos on YouTube. I was really hoping that I might be able to get away with not having a desktop environment, i3 with Xorg in this case. I thought it might be possible to use sclang inside a Vim terminal or something. It seems like there are ways to run SuperCollider in Vim and Emacs, but I did not investigate either of these methods. For this video, I will just be using SuperCollider's IDE with SCIDE. In terms of necessary packages, I actually used Scott Eric Petersen's extremely helpful Pipewire and Jack on Arch Linux article as a guide. I did end up doing a few things differently, but this article was the most essential resource for me during the setup process, and I will include a link to it, along with the other resources I found helpful in the video description. Essentially, I needed several packages, SuperCollider, Carla, Pipewire, and I would recommend adding the needed switch after it to prevent having to reinstall anything. For users of Firefox, Pipewire Jack actually may be installed with Firefox depending on how it was installed. I don't have Jack 2 because it seems that Jack 2 and Pipewire Jack conflict. Also because I always have a lot of problems with Jack, and that was why I was excited to try Pipewire. I also have Pipewire Pulse just in case. Real-time privileges are necessary for SuperCollider, and the user must be added to the real-time privileges group. If this is not done, it will not be possible to get the SuperCollider server to start up. I also installed ALSA tools, ALSA utils, and ALSA lib. Petersen says these are optional, but I wanted to install them to work with ALSA anyway. After the packages have been installed, the next step would be to make user settings. Petersen includes the command in the article sudo user mod -ag audio power in real time for the desired username. And again, if user settings are not done, the SuperCollider server will not start. So, after everything is set up, and I recommend rebooting for all settings to take effect, the SuperCollider IDE can be started with the scide command. To interact with it in a terminal, the sclang command can be used. sclang might be lighter on system resources, but I'm not 100% sure. The IDE is a bit more user-friendly, especially starting out because accessing the user guide is really easy. For those interested in a more in-depth look at SuperCollider, I really recommend Eli Fieldsteel's series of tutorials. Wow! I also need to start Carla. Carla is what I use for routing, and I actually like it quite a bit. Since I don't have the SuperCollider server running yet, nothing is connected, and I do plan to do a short demo at the end partially to illustrate the routing process inside Carla. The user interface actually reminds me of Native Instruments Reactor, where virtual cables can be connected and things. I find it very easy to use. It seems like QJack-CTL may be more popular and potentially offers more functionality. I haven't had the best luck with QJack-CTL, though. Next, I would just like to talk briefly about some of the oddness I have encountered with my current setup, and the countermeasures I have found so far. I already mentioned the CPU spikes that seem to happen sometimes. Usually, it does not seem to be an issue, but especially if my host system goes to sleep, or if I switch out of the guest and start trying to do a lot in the host, it seems more prone to occur. In these cases, stopping and rebooting the server and redoing the routing settings in Carla seems to work great. On a related note, usually when I restart the SuperCollider server, or start Carla first, the SuperCollider server will hang. I will demonstrate in the demo, but basically removing the input routing in Carla seems to work. SuperCollider always wants to grab input routing, and since I'm not using input routing right now, I just disconnect it, and that seems to solve the issue. Finally, I would like to do a quick demo. I'm going to quit all the programs, and then go through the workflow of getting everything set up and running. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has been helpful.